My husband put me in economy, flew business with his secretary. Later, he panicked, seeing me with the CEO at the airport lounge. My name is Anna, and I am 34 years old. I live in Chicago, and I thought I knew what my marriage looked like. When my husband invited me on his business trip to Los Angeles, I believed it was our chance to reconnect after months of distance. But standing at that check-in counter, I discovered something that made my heart stop. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe, if you have not already. Now let me tell you how everything started to fall apart. I met Derek during our sophomore year at Northwestern University. He was studying finance, I was in marketing, and we crossed paths at a campus coffee shop when he accidentally grabbed my latte instead of his black coffee. He made a face at the sweetness I laughed, and somehow that small moment turned into 3 years of dating, and then 7 years of marriage. For the longest time I believed we had something solid. We were not the couple who posted every moment on social media or declared our love with grand gestures. We were quieter than that. Sunday mornings with the newspaper, cooking dinner together on Fridays, small touches as we passed each other in our Lincoln Park apartment. Those things felt more real to me than any diamond ring or surprise vacation. I worked as the marketing director for a mid-sized cosmetics company downtown. It was demanding work, but I loved it. I loved building campaigns, understanding what made people connect with a brand, finding the story behind every product. Derek always said he admired my creativity, that it balanced out his numbers-driven mind. He was a senior financial analyst at a major tech corporation, and 2 years ago he got promoted to deputy CFO. I was so proud of him. We celebrated with champagne and a weekend trip to Michigan, but somewhere along the way things shifted. It happened so gradually that I almost missed it. About 8 months before that trip to Los Angeles, Derek started coming home later. At first it was once a week, then twice, then almost every night. He blamed a new project, a major acquisition his company was pursuing. I understood. I had been through busy seasons myself. I tried to be supportive. But other things changed too. His phone, which used to sit face up on the kitchen counter while we ate dinner, now stayed in his pocket, or face down on the table. When it buzzed, he would glance at it quickly, then put it away without responding. If I asked who it was, he would say it was just work. His tone was dismissive, like the question itself was ridiculous. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped reaching for my hand when we watched television. The small intimacies that had defined our relationship evaporated so slowly that I kept telling myself I was imagining things. And then there was Megan. Derek hired her as his executive assistant about 10 months ago. She was 26, fresh out of graduate school, eager to prove herself. At first he barely mentioned her, but over time her name started appearing in almost every conversation. Megan organized the entire presentation. Megan found an error in the quarterly report that saved us from embarrassment. Megan is so efficient, I do not know how I managed before her. I remember sitting across from him at dinner one night, watching him describe how Megan had stayed late to help him prepare for a board meeting. His eyes lit up in a way they had not when he looked at me in months. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I told myself I was being paranoid, jealous, insecure. My best friend Jenna did not agree. Jenna and I had been friends since 8th grade. She knew me better than anyone, sometimes better than I knew myself. When I mentioned Derek's late nights and his constant praise of his new assistant, she raised an eyebrow. "Anna," she said, "I am not saying anything is definitely happening, but you need to pay attention. Trust your gut." But I did not want to trust my gut. My gut was telling me something I was not ready to hear. So I convinced myself that after 7 years together, after everything we had built, Derek would never betray me. He was not that kind of man. I threw myself into making our marriage work. I cooked his favorite meals even when I was exhausted from work. I bought new lingerie and suggested weekend getaways. I tried to schedule date nights, but he always had something come up at the last minute. A client dinner, an emergency call, a deadline he had forgotten about. Each cancellation stung, but I made excuses for him. He was under pressure. The promotion had added stress. Once this project was over, things would go back to normal. Then one evening in early March, Derek came home with unexpected news. "There is a major tech conference in Los Angeles next month," he said. 3 days. All the big players will be there. And I want you to come with me." I almost dropped the spatula I was holding. He wanted me to come after months of distance of canceled plans of feeling like a roommate instead of a wife. Really? I asked, unable to hide my surprise. He smiled, and for a moment he looked like the man I had married. Of course, we have not traveled together in forever. I will handle all the arrangements, flights, hotel, everything. You just need to take the time off work. That night, I lay awake feeling something I had not felt in months. Hope. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Derek was trying to reconnect to bridge the gap that had grown between us. Maybe this trip would be the turning point. I requested vacation days from my company. I went shopping for new clothes, wanting to look my best beside him at the conference events. I imagined us walking along the beach in Santa Monica, having dinner at a nice restaurant, remembering why we fell in love in the first place. Derek said he would book everything. The flights, the hotel, all of it. I did not think to double-check. Why would I? He was my husband. I trusted him completely. Looking back now, I realize that trust was my biggest mistake. The morning of our flight, I woke up at 5:30. I had laid out my outfit the night before, a navy blue wrap dress that Derek once said brought out my eyes. I did my makeup carefully, wanting to feel confident and put together. This trip was a fresh start, and I intended to make it count. Derek was already dressed when I came out of the bathroom. He seemed distracted, checking his phone, repeatedly running his fingers through his hair in that nervous way he did when something was on his mind. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," he said without looking up. "Listen, I need to meet a colleague before we board. Something about the presentation for tomorrow. So, I am going to head to the airport separately. You take the next cab, okay?" I tried to hide my disappointment. "Oh, I thought we would go together. It is just easier this way. Less rushing around. I will see you at the gate." He kissed my cheek quickly, grabbed his carry-on, and was out the door before I could respond. I stood in our apartment for a moment, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling settling in my chest. It is fine, I told myself. He is just stressed about work. Once we get to Los Angeles, everything will be different. The cab ride to O'Hare took 45 minutes with morning traffic. I spent the time looking out the window, watching Chicago pass by, trying to hold on to my optimism. We were going on a trip together. That meant something. That had to mean something. When I arrived at the terminal, I made my way to the check-in counter. The line was short, and within a few minutes I was standing in front of a young woman with a bright smile and a name tag that read, Cynthia. "Hi there," I said. "I am checking in." "The name is Anna Harrison." Cynthia typed on her keyboard, then paused. Her smile flickered slightly. "One moment, please," she said. I waited, watching her brow furrow as she looked at her screen. "Mrs. Harrison," she said slowly. "I have you on flight 472 to Los Angeles, but I want to confirm your seat assignment." "Sure," I said. "Is there a problem?" She hesitated. "You are in seat 34B. That is in our economy cabin." I blinked. There must be a mistake. My husband booked business class for both of us. Cynthia typed some more, her expression growing uncomfortable. "I see a booking for Derek Harrison in seat 4A business class, and there is another passenger booked alongside him in seat 4B, a Ms. Megan Collins." The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the counter. "I am sorry," I said, my voice sounding strange even to myself. "Can you repeat that Mr. Harrison is in business class seat 4A? Miss Collins is in 4B. And you, Mrs. Harrison, are in economy seat 34B. I could not speak, could not think, could not breathe. Cynthia looked at me with something like pity in her eyes. "Would you like me to inquire about an upgrade? Business class is fully booked, but I might be able to find you something in premium economy." I shook my head numbly. No, that is fine. Just give me my boarding pass." She printed it and handed it over. I took it with trembling fingers and walked away from the counter in a daze. My husband had put me in economy. He had put his secretary in business class, next to him, while his wife sat 30 rows behind them. I found a bench near the windows and sat down heavily. My hands were shaking. My vision blurred, and I realized I was crying. Right there in the middle of O'Hare International Airport, I was falling apart. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to call Derek immediately to scream at him to demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that had spent 8 months making excuses, wanted to hear his side first. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe the booking system made an error. Maybe he did not know. I wiped my eyes and made my way to Gate 12. My flight was boarding in 90 minutes. I had time to think, time to figure out what I was going to say. When I reached the gate area, I saw him. Derek was standing near the window, and he was not alone. Megan stood beside him. She was wearing a form-fitting red dress and heels that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves around her shoulders. She was laughing at something Derek said, her hand touching his arm in a way that was far too familiar. And Derek, my husband of 7 years, was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. I watched them for a full minute. I watched him lean in to whisper something that made her smile. I watched him place his hand on the small of her back. I watched him glance around the gate area nervously, probably looking for me. When his eyes finally found mine, I saw something flash across his face. Surprise, then annoyance, then a careful mask of neutrality. He said something to Megan, then walked toward me. "Anna, you made it." His tone was casual, as if nothing was wrong, as if he had not just relegated me to the back of the plane while his mistress sat in luxury beside him. I held up my boarding pass. "Row 34, I said. Economy." He did not flinch. "I know. Business was fully booked when I made the reservations. I had to take what was available." "Really?" I said. "And Megan. How did she end up in 4B? "She is my assistant Anna. I need her close so we can work on the presentation during the flight. It is a business decision. A business decision." I stared at him, waiting for him to say something else. An apology. An acknowledgement that this looked bad. Anything. But he just checked his watch. "They are going to start boarding soon. I will see you in Los Angeles, okay? We can share a cab to the hotel." He turned and walked back to Megan without another word. I stood there watching them. My boarding pass crumpled in my fist, and I felt something inside me go very, very cold. They called business class first, of course. I watched from a distance as Derek and Megan walked down the jet bridge together. He carried her bag for her. She laughed at something he said. They looked like a couple. A real couple. Not a boss and his assistant. Not like a man whose wife was standing 40 feet away drowning in humiliation. When economy class finally boarded, I shuffled down the aisle with everyone else. The plane was a Boeing 737, and by the time I reached row 34, I understood exactly what my husband thought I was worth. The middle seat, seat 34B, was wedged between a heavyset man in a Bears jersey who had already claimed both armrests and a young mother with a fussy infant who could not have been more than 4 months old. The man smelled like stale coffee and fast food. The baby was already whimpering on the verge of a full meltdown. I squeezed into my seat, my knees pressed against the seat in front of me, and tried to breathe. The cabin felt suffocating. The air was recycled and stale. Every few minutes the baby would let out a wail that cut through the white noise of the engines. The man beside me kept elbowing me as he shifted in his seat. And somewhere up ahead, behind that curtain dividing the plane, my husband was sipping champagne with his secretary. The flight from Chicago to Los Angeles was scheduled for 4 hours. 4 hours of sitting in that cramped seat, replaying every moment of the past 8 months. Every late night. Every canceled dinner. Every time Derek had mentioned Megan's name with that light in his eyes. I had been so blind. I pressed my forehead against the window, even though there was nothing to see but clouds. I did not want the man beside me to see me crying. I did not want the young mother to feel obligated to comfort me. I just wanted to disappear. About 2 hours into the flight, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked up to find a woman leaning over from the row ahead of me. She was older, maybe mid-60s, with silver hair styled in an elegant bob and kind eyes framed by laugh lines. She was wearing a cashmere cardigan and pearls that looked like they were worth more than my car. "Forgive me for intruding," she said softly, "but you seem like you are carrying something heavy today." I was so startled that I did not know how to respond. I had spent the last 2 hours trying to be invisible, and here was this stranger seeing right through me. "I am okay," I managed. "Just tired." She smiled gently. "You do not have to tell me anything. But I have been where you are. Many years ago." and I remember how lonely it felt to suffer in silence. I do not know why, but her words broke something loose in me. Maybe it was her kindness. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe I just needed someone to acknowledge that what was happening to me was real. "My husband," I whispered. "He is sitting in business class right now with another woman, and I am back here, in the seat he chose for me." The woman's eyes softened with understanding. She did not look shocked. She did not offer platitudes. She just nodded. "My name is Margaret," she said, "and I am sorry that you are going through this. But I want you to know something." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the doorways to our best ones. We just cannot see it when we are in the middle of the pain." I did not believe her. Not then. But I filed her words away somewhere in my heart, a tiny seed of hope in a desert of despair. "Thank you," I said. She patted my hand once, then turned back around. We did not speak again for the rest of the flight. When the plane finally began its descent into Los Angeles, I felt hollow. Empty. I had cried all the tears I had. Now there was just a cold numbness spreading through my chest. I waited until most of the passengers had deplaned before I stood up. I did not want to walk past business class and see Derek's face. I did not want to know if he had looked for me. I did not want to know if he had not. When I finally made my way through the cabin, I paused at row 4. The seats were empty. The champagne glasses had been cleared away. The blankets were folded neatly, waiting for the next passengers. Derek had not waited for me. He had not even looked back. The arrivals hall at LAX was chaos. Hundreds of people rushing in every direction, rolling suitcases clattering against the floor, announcements echoing through the cavernous space. I stood near the baggage carousel, scanning the crowd for Derek. I found him near the exit doors. He was standing with Megan, both of them checking their phones. They had already collected their luggage, 2 sleek black carry-ons that probably matched. Derek saw me approaching and waved, but it was not the wave of a husband greeting his wife. It was the wave of someone flagging down an acquaintance. "Anna, there you are," he said. "Listen, change of plans. I need to take Megan to meet a client before we head to the hotel. Last-minute thing. You understand, right? Just grab a taxi and I will meet you there later." Megan smiled at me. It was a polite smile, practiced and professional, but there was something underneath it. Something that looked a lot like victory. "Sure," I heard myself say. "No problem." Derek was already turning away. "Great. See you tonight." And just like that, they were gone. Walking out the doors together, disappearing into the Los Angeles sunshine, while I stood alone in that crowded terminal. I took a taxi to the hotel. The driver tried to make conversation, commenting on the weather and the traffic, but I could not bring myself to respond. I just stared out the window, watching the palm trees and billboards blur past. The hotel was a towering glass structure in downtown Los Angeles. Very modern, very expensive. The kind of place where business deals happened over cocktails, and everyone wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At the front desk, I gave my name and waited while the clerk typed on her computer. "Mrs. Harrison," she said. "I have you in room 318. That is a standard room on the 3rd floor. Here is your key card." I took it. Standard room. 3rd floor. "Can you tell me what room Derek Harrison is in?" The clerk hesitated. "I am sorry I cannot give out that information, but I can call his room for you if you would like." "That is okay. I already know." "Suite on the 12th floor. Of course. The penthouse level. Where the executives stayed. Where the important people slept. And me, I was on 3. In a room that probably faced the parking garage. I took the elevator up and found my room. It was small. Clean, but small. A queen-sized bed with white linens, a tiny bathroom with a shower stall, a window that looked out at the building next door. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over Derek's contact. I wanted to call him. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask him why he had done this, why he was treating me like I was nothing. But I did not call. Instead, I called Jenna. She answered on the 2nd ring. "Anna, are you in LA? How is it?" I told her everything. The check-in counter, the boarding passes, Megan in 4B, the middle seat in economy, Derek leaving with her at the airport, the standard room on the 3rd floor. By the time I finished, Jenna was silent. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, trying to control her fury. "Anna," she finally said, "you need to get proof, and you need to start thinking about yourself. Do not let him gaslight you. Do not let him make you feel like you are crazy. You saw what you saw." "I know." "So what are you going to do?" I did not have an answer. Not yet. But something was shifting inside me. The numbness was fading, replaced by something sharper. Something that felt almost like anger. "I do not know yet," I said. "But I am going to figure it out." That night, Derek did not come to my room. He did not call. He did not text. I ate dinner alone at the hotel restaurant, a salad I barely touched, while couples and business groups chatted around me. At the table next to mine, 2 women were discussing the conference. One of them mentioned a name that caught my attention. Richard Thornton, CEO of Thornton Technologies. "He is giving the keynote tomorrow. Everyone is talking about it." Her companion nodded. "I heard he is looking for a new marketing director. Some big expansion project in Asia." I pulled out my phone and looked up Richard Thornton. His company was a major player in enterprise software. They had grown rapidly over the past decade and were now looking to expand into international markets. Marketing director. Asia expansion. I went back to my room and spent the rest of the night researching. Thornton Technologies. Their market position, their competitors, their current marketing strategy. By 2 a.m, I had an idea. By sunrise, I had a plan. I did not tell Derek I was attending the conference. Why would I? He had not invited me as his partner. He had brought me as an afterthought tucked away in economy class, and a 3rd-floor room while he paraded his mistress through business class and penthouse suites. So I decided to attend on my own terms. I put on my best power suit, a charcoal gray ensemble with a white silk blouse underneath. I did my makeup the way I did for important client presentations, confident, polished, professional. I used my own company credentials to register for the conference. As the marketing director of a cosmetics company, I was technically in a related field: consumer goods, brand building. The fundamentals were the same. The convention center was massive. Thousands of attendees milled through the halls collecting swag bags and business cards. I grabbed a coffee and started networking. It felt good. For the first time in months, I felt like myself. Not Derek's wife. Not the woman abandoned in economy class. Just Anna. A professional with ideas and expertise and value. By mid-morning, I had exchanged cards with half a dozen people. I attended 2 panel discussions on digital marketing trends. I took notes. I asked questions. I remembered why I loved my work. And then I met Linda Chen. Linda was the VP of marketing at Thornton Technologies. I recognized her name from my research the night before. She was tall and elegant with sharp cheekbones and an air of authority that filled the space around her. We ended up at the same coffee station during a break between sessions. "These conferences are exhausting," she said, stirring sugar into her cup. "I feel like I have shaken 1,000 hands already." I laughed. "Tell me about it. But worth it for the connections, right?" We started talking. I told her about my work in cosmetics. She told me about Thornton's expansion plans. Within 15 minutes, we had discovered we shared similar philosophies about brand building and consumer engagement. "You should meet Richard," she said. "Richard Thornton, our CEO. He has been looking for someone with exactly your background for our Asia initiative." I would love that, I said, keeping my voice steady, even as my heart raced. That evening, there was a cocktail reception in the hotel ballroom. I almost did not go. Part of me wanted to hide in my room and avoid any chance of running into Derek and Megan together. But the other part of me, the part that was tired of hiding, tired of being invisible, refused to back down. I wore a simple black dress. Nothing flashy. But it fit perfectly, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who deserved to be there. Someone who belonged. The ballroom was glittering with crystal chandeliers and ice sculptures. Waiters circulated with champagne and tiny appetizers. I spotted Derek across the room immediately. He was standing with a group of executives, Megan by his side as always. She was wearing a red dress that showed off her figure. Derek saw me at the same moment. His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. He excused himself from his group and walked over to me. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and tense. "Attending the conference," I said calmly. "Same as you." "This is a business event, Anna. You should not be here." I am in business, Derek, in case you forgot. Before he could respond, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to find Linda Chen smiling at me. Anna, there you are? Come on, Richard just arrived. I want to introduce you. She led me away before Derek could say another word. I did not look back to see his expression, but I could feel his eyes burning into my back. Richard Thornton was exactly what I had expected from my research. Mid-50s, silver-haired with the relaxed confidence of someone who had built an empire from nothing. He shook my hand with a firm grip and looked at me with genuine interest as Linda explained who I was. Marketing and cosmetics, he said. Fascinating industry. All about emotion and aspiration. Exactly, I said. You are not selling a product. You are selling a feeling. A version of yourself that people want to become. He nodded slowly. That is exactly what we need for our Asia expansion. We have the technology. What we need is the story. We talked for nearly an hour. About brand positioning. About cultural differences in Asian markets. About the importance of local partnerships and authentic engagement. Richard listened more than he spoke, asking sharp questions that showed he was genuinely evaluating what I had to say. By the end of the conversation, he handed me his personal card. Have dinner with me tomorrow night, he said. Just business. I want to discuss some ideas with you in more detail. I would be honored. As I walked away from that conversation, I passed Derek. He was standing alone near the bar watching me. Megan was nowhere in sight. His face was pale, confused, maybe even scared. I smiled at him as I walked past. Not a cruel smile, not a triumphant smile, just the smile of a woman who was starting to remember her worth. That night I could not sleep, not because I was sad. For the first time in months, sadness was not what kept me awake. It was something else, something sharper, a need to know the truth. Around midnight, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it to find Derek standing in the hallway. Can we talk? He asked. His tone was different now, less dismissive, almost pleading. I let him in. He walked to the window and stood there for a moment looking out at the city lights. What were you doing with Richard Thornton tonight, networking, I said. Is that not what conferences are for? He turned to face me. Do you have any idea who that man is? Thornton Technologies is the biggest potential partner my company has. I have been working for months to get a meeting with him. And there you were chatting with him like old friends. Maybe I am better at networking than you give me credit for. Derek's jaw tightened. What are you trying to do, Anna? Are you trying to sabotage my career? I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. Sabotage your career, I repeated. Derek, you put me in economy class while you flew business with your secretary. You gave me a standard room on the 3rd floor while you stay in a penthouse suite. You have ignored me for the entire trip. And you think I am the one sabotaging things that is different, he said. Those are logistics. This is business. Is it? I asked. Is that what you tell yourself? He stared at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. But then the mask came back, and he was Derek again. Dismissive. Superior. We will talk about this when we get home, he said. Just stay away from Thornton. He walked to the door, but before he left, he reached into his pocket for his phone. It was not there. He patted his jacket, his pants a frown creasing his forehead. I think you left it here, I said. His eyes darted around the room, landing on the nightstand where his phone sat. He must have set it down when he came in. He grabbed it quickly and left without another word. But here's the thing. While he was lecturing me by the window with his back turned, I had heard that phone buzz. I had seen the screen light up with a message. From Megan. Miss you tonight. When can I see you? And in the 30 seconds before Derek noticed his phone was missing, I had done something that would change everything. I had opened his messages. I had seen months of conversations between him and Megan. Not professional conversations. Love notes, plans to meet, complaints about me, photos that made me feel sick to my stomach. I had taken pictures of everything. Now I had proof. I woke up the next morning with a strange sense of calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally stop fighting reality and start planning for what comes next. I did not cry at breakfast. I did not feel the urge to confront Derek or cause a scene. I simply ate my eggs and drank my coffee and thought about dinner with Richard Thornton that evening. The conference had one more day of sessions. I attended a morning panel on international expansion strategies, taking careful notes on everything that might be relevant to Thornton Technologies. Then I had lunch with Linda Chen, who spent an hour telling me about the company culture and the vision Richard had for the Asia project. By the time evening came, I was ready. The restaurant Richard had chosen was on the top floor of a building in Santa Monica, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a sommelier and a view of the Pacific Ocean stretching out to the horizon. Richard was already there when I arrived. He stood to greet me, pulling out my chair like a gentleman from another era. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I hope you do not mind I took the liberty of ordering a bottle of wine." "Not at all. We talked for 3 hours. About marketing, yes, but also about life. About ambition and setbacks, and the unexpected paths that lead us to where we are." Richard told me about starting his company in a garage when he was 30, about the early failures, about the moment everything finally clicked, and at the end of the evening he made his offer. "I want you to come work for Thornton Technologies," he said. "VP of Marketing for our Asia Pacific division. You would be based in our San Francisco office, but you would travel frequently. Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo. It is a big job, bigger than what you are doing now." He named a salary that was 3 times my current income. Stock options, full benefits, the opportunity of a lifetime. "I need time to think," I said. "Of course," he replied, "but not too much time. I need someone who can start within 60 days. I will have an answer for you by the end of the week." We shook hands, and I walked out of that restaurant feeling like a different person than the woman who had arrived in Los Angeles 2 days ago. That woman had been broken, humiliated, invisible. This woman had options. The next morning was our flight back to Chicago. I packed my bag, checked out of my tiny room, and took a taxi to LAX. This time, I did not check in with Derek's booking. I went to the counter and bought myself a business class ticket with my own credit card. It felt good. No, it felt necessary. I was done letting other people decide where I belonged. The executive lounge was on the second floor of the terminal. I settled into a comfortable leather chair with a glass of champagne and a magazine, trying to ignore the voice in my head that kept asking what I was doing. Then fate intervened. "Excuse me. Is this seat taken?" I looked up to find Richard Thornton standing beside me, carry-on in hand. "Richard," I said, surprised. "You are on the Chicago flight connection to New York. I have meetings tomorrow." He sat down beside me and we fell into easy conversation. He asked about my career, my goals, my vision for the role he had offered me. I found myself speaking freely without the careful editing I usually did in professional settings. For a few minutes, I forgot about Derek entirely. And then I saw him. Derek and Megan walked into the lounge together. She was hanging on his arm, laughing at something he said. They looked relaxed, happy, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Derek spotted me first. I watched his face go through a series of emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, panic, because I was not alone. I was sitting beside Richard Thornton, the man Derek had been trying to reach for months, the CEO, whose partnership could make or break his company's expansion plans, and we were clearly in the middle of an intimate conversation. Derek dropped Megan's arm and walked toward us, his face arranged in a professional smile that did not reach his eyes. "Richard," he said, extending his hand. "What a coincidence." "I am Derek Harrison from Vertex Solutions. We have been trying to schedule a meeting with your team." Richard stood and shook his hand, but his expression was cool. "Ah, yes. Harrison, I believe I have seen some emails from your people." Derek nodded eagerly. "We would love the opportunity to discuss a potential partnership." Richard glanced at me, then back at Derek. "I understand you two are married." Derek's smile faltered. "Yes. Anna is my wife. She is quite impressive," Richard said. "In fact, I have just offered her a position with my company. VP of Marketing for Asia Pacific. She would be an excellent addition to our team." Derek looked at me. His face was gray, his mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood up slowly. "Richard," I said, "it was wonderful seeing you. I will be in touch about that offer very soon." Then I turned to Derek. "As for you," I said, my voice steady, "we will discuss everything when we get back to Chicago. Through our lawyers." I picked up my bag and walked away, leaving him standing there with his mouth still open. I did not look at Megan. I did not need to. She was irrelevant now. On the plane, I sat in seat 3A business class, window seat. The champagne was excellent, and the legroom was divine. Linda Chen had ended up on the same flight, and she sat beside me showing me photos of the San Francisco office and telling me about her favorite restaurants near headquarters. Somewhere behind me, probably in economy this time since business was full, Derek was sitting with the consequences of his choices. I did not look back, not once. The first weeks after Los Angeles were the hardest. I stayed with Jenna at her apartment in Wicker Park. She cleared out her guest room and stocked the fridge with my favorite comfort foods, and did not ask any questions when I spent whole evenings staring at the wall. Grief does not move in a straight line. Some days I felt powerful remembering how I had stood in that airport lounge and reclaimed my dignity. Other days I felt shattered replaying memories of the man I thought I had married, the life I thought we were building. I missed our apartment. I missed Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers. I missed the version of Derek that had existed before Megan, or maybe the version that had only existed in my imagination. But I did not miss feeling invisible. I did not miss being put in economy class while someone else sat in my seat. Derek tried to contact me, of course. Texts, calls, emails, all of them saying some version of the same thing. He was sorry. He had made a mistake. "Could we please talk?" I did not respond. I let my lawyer handle everything. The divorce took 4 months. With the evidence I had gathered from his phone, plus testimony from a private investigator I hired to document his ongoing affair with Megan, the proceedings were relatively straightforward. I got half of our savings, the car, and my freedom. Derek got Megan, for a while at least. While the paperwork was being finalized, I accepted Richard Thornton's offer. VP of Marketing for Asia Pacific at Thornton Technologies. I gave notice at my old job, found a sleek 1-bedroom apartment in River North, with views of the skyline, and started the process of rebuilding my life. The new job was everything I had hoped for and more. Challenging, creative, full of opportunities to prove myself. Within 3 months, I was leading a team of 12 people across 4 countries. Within 6 months, I was presenting to the board of directors on our expansion strategy. I traveled constantly. Hong Kong for market research, Singapore for partnership meetings, Tokyo for a product launch that exceeded every projection. I discovered parts of myself I had forgotten existed. The ambitious woman, the capable leader, the person who did not need anyone else to define her worth. I also discovered simpler pleasures, yoga classes on Saturday mornings, long walks along the lakefront, friendships with colleagues who appreciated my ideas and my company, evenings alone with a good book, comfortable in my own silence. For the first time in years, I was not waiting for someone else to make me happy. I was making myself happy. And then, almost exactly 1 year after that flight to Los Angeles, I heard about Derek. Jenna told me. She had stayed in touch with some of our mutual friends, the ones who had quietly chosen sides during the divorce. Apparently, Derek had been demoted at Vertex Solutions. The Thornton partnership never happened, and his performance reviews had suffered. Rumors said he was drinking more, showing up late, struggling to keep his head above water. As for Megan, she had left him 3 months after the divorce was finalized, moved on to some venture capitalist she met at a conference, traded up as they say in her world. I wish I could tell you I felt nothing when I heard this, that I had achieved some perfect Buddhist detachment, where his suffering did not register at all. The truth is more complicated. I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Yes, but mostly I felt sad. Sad for the man he had become. Sad for the years we had wasted. Sad for all the ways we had both failed each other. But I did not feel responsible, and I did not feel guilty for moving on, because here is what I learned during that year of rebuilding. Other people's choices are not your responsibility. You cannot control what they do. You can only control what you do. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who do not see your worth. I also learned that rock bottom can be a foundation. That flight to Los Angeles sitting in economy class, while my husband flew business with his mistress, was the worst moment of my life. but it was also the beginning of my best life. The universe has a funny way of working like that. And I learned that healing is not about forgetting. I still remember everything. The pain, the humiliation, the betrayal. But those memories do not control me anymore. They are part of my story, not the whole story. And my story is still being written. Last month I was promoted again. Senior VP, a seat on the executive leadership team, a corner office with windows on 2 sides. When I sat down at my new desk for the first time, I thought about Margaret, the woman on the plane who had told me that the worst moments can become doorways to the best ones. She was right. So if you are watching this and you are going through something hard, something that feels like the end, I want you to know it is not the end. It is just a door. And on the other side might be something better than you ever imagined. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone made you feel like you were less than you deserved? How did you find your way back to yourself? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you are not subscribed yet, join our community so you never miss a story. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. And remember, no matter what seat someone else tries to put you in, you always have the power to upgrade yourself. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.